Okay, you're all set, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Butkus, the Vice Chair of the Connecticut Historic Preservation Council, and I'm calling to order our November 1st, 2023 meeting. Attending this morning are the following council members: Beth Ackley, Vincentia Ducey, Beth Burgess, myself, Paul Butkus, Tom Elmore, Leah Glazer, Andy Horowitz, and Sarah Nelson. A quorum is therefore present. The following is the Historic Preservation Council's format and review of public comment procedures. Given the hybrid format of today's meeting, and for those who are visitors today, I want to review and explain our procedures. The order of presentations, I'll read each motion and ask for the motion to be moved and seconded. Staff will present the agenda item to the council, and council members will have an opportunity to ask questions. If called upon by staff, a representative of the organization may offer statements or address council's questions. For members of the public who wish to speak to the agenda item, we ask that you identify yourself and your affiliation. After all questions have been addressed and statements made, a roll call vote will be taken. If members of the public have letters and or written statements that they wish to submit to the record, please email them to Jonathan Kinney at jonathan.kinney@ct.gov. The Historic Preservation Council takes statements from the members of the public, but does not respond to questions. Lastly, please only address the particular agenda item being addressed at that time. The following is the Historic Preservation Council's policy regarding conflict of interest. The Historic Preservation Council votes on matters which provide leadership, service, and economic benefit to property owners, consultants, local governments, and not-for-profit organizations. Given this responsibility and to maintain the highest professional standards in the discharge of our duties, it's important to maintain a strong code of ethics for all council members and department employees. In order to avoid possible violations of the Department of Economic and Community Development ethics statement, it's necessary for the council to be aware of any situations in which there is a real, potential, or apparent conflict of interest involving anyone here. A conflict of interest may occur when a public official's participation in agency matters result in personal financial gain. All council and staff have been provided with a copy of the Department of Economic and Community Development ethics statement and governing state statutes. Having reviewed them and today's agenda, members of the council and staff are now asked to disclose any affiliations with entities or projects that may create a conflict of interest as identified by the agency policy and pursuant to Connecticut General Statute I-79 through I-89 entitled Code of Ethics for Public Officials. Once disclosed, the member or staff may recuse themselves from that particular agenda item. Having read this statement, are there any council or staff members that would like to disclose a conflict of interest to any of the items on today's agenda? Beth Burgess.
Thanks, Paul. I will recuse myself from VB3 for the Stowe Center as I was lately employed there.
Thank you. Are there any other conflicts? I don't see anyone's hand raised. Thank you. So for council members being recused, please make sure that staff has your cell phone number so staff can communicate with you via text message to let you back into the platform. All right, our first agenda item will therefore be item 4, the review and approval of meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our October 4th meeting?
So moved, Sarah.
Via second.
Okay. Sarah motion and V second. Any corrections or comments? Seeing and hearing none, move to a roll call vote. Beth Ackley.
Aye.
V.
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I will abstain. Tom Elmore.
Aye.
Leah Glazer.
Aye. Aye.
Andy Horowitz.
Andy Horowitz. Aye.
And Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving quickly to our next item, State Historic Preservation Grant action items. New action item 5B1, Certified Local Government Historic Preservation Enhancement Grant for the town of Ridgefield regarding human skeletal remains analysis in Ridgefield. I'll read the motion. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a certified local government historic preservation enhancement grant funded by the Historic Preservation Fund of the Department of the Interior National Park Service to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All federal and state grant guidelines and requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for the funding. The applicant is the town of Ridgefield. The project is forensic analysis of recovered skeletal remains from Battle of Ridgefield in 1777 in the amount of $20,000. Can I have a motion to approve or bring for discussion?
So moved, Tom.
A second?
I'll second Sarah.
Discussion?
Good morning, everybody. This is Mary Dunn. I don't know if I'm on camera or not. So staff recommends approval of this application. SHPO's been partnering with the town of Ridgefield for a couple of Park Service grants under the American Battlefield Protection Act. And this is not specifically related to that, but the discoveries made are going to be an important part of the ongoing history of the Battle of Ridgefield. So we do recommend approval. Stephen Bartkus and Nick Bellantoni, we're going to try to be here. I don't think they're here. They both had a 10 o'clock that they had to leave for.
Stephen might be here.
Stephen might be here, but Kathy Labadia is here to hopefully answer any questions that I can't.
Sarah Nelson, you have a question? You're muted, Sarah.
Sorry, so many controls here. Let me just bring this up. Mary, the question is on the last page, the last 2 pages of the application. I think this is maybe a formatting thing, but page 15 of 15, it breaks down the costs related to this particular project. And there's missing information, which I assume is related to the previous page, but could you just clarify that for the record? So if you go to page 15 of 15.
Yeah, let me get my laptop, sorry.
It looks like it was a horizontal format that got put on two vertical pages, so the lines don't carry across.
Oh, okay.
That's what I assumed, Paul, but I just want to have that clarified.
Yes.
Sure. Okay, give me 2 seconds to pull it up. Sorry about that. Got the paper copy. That's okay. Thanks. Okay, I mean, I do see that. Okay, so looking at page 15 of 15, and you're looking at costs, but they're kind of askew. Is that what you're saying? Or you're not sure what they're related to?
Yeah, so there's 1,098, there's 5,000, there's 5,802, and they don't have a task related to it.
Okay,
Which
and I think that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Which I assume comes from page 14.
Yes, I will confirm that that is exactly right. As Paul suggested, this is in a horizontal format, but it's jumping pages. So I should have changed the orientation to landscape, and then it would be more clear. So I would be happy to reformat this, for the record. But for example, the 1098 would be related to the access to archaeological and osteological materials, some sampling required. Yeah, you just kind of match up the lines, but
Right.
I would be happy to format that so that there's no question.
For
And I
the
understand.
record, I think that would be a good thing to do.
I agree. Will do.
Thank you. Andy Horowitz, you have a question.
Hi, yeah, I don't
this may not be directly in our purview because it's not included in the budget, but I noticed that there's the idea that there will be full military honors afforded in reburial, but there's some question of whether these are in fact British soldiers. And I don't know, surely we've encountered this problem before. I don't think we're giving full military honors to enemy soldiers. So I just want to know, I assume they're aware of that, but that should either be clarified or someone should point out that this should not be an automatic decision. I don't know if these need to be repatriated or.
Exactly, yeah. And Kathy could speak to this. But the whole point of
Sorry.
Yeah, the whole point of determining the DNA, I guess, is to determine whether they are American or English soldiers, and then making sure that their remains are respectfully returned to where they belong. And I see Kathy, who can probably clarify even better for me.
Yep. So these are would be considered, if they're American, militia, which becomes National Guard. And so we've been working with the Office of Military Affairs here. And so, yes, if they are American, they will go through a traditional full military honors. However, if they are English, and this has happened in the past, the English have actually decided that they do not want these remains returned.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the assumption would be that they are not going to request them back. However, we would work with the British government to confirm that they're going to follow what they have traditionally said, in which case the decision was made that they would still want to have these individuals reinterred with military honors, but with involvement with the British government. Right? Does that help answer your question?
It does. I just was imagining that the scenario is quite different depending on the determination of whether these are English or Americans, and that nuance was not recognized in the application. So I want to make sure that was flagged.
Andy, your hand's still raised. Any other council members have questions?
I just wanted to sort of ask a follow-up question to that for Kathy. So in the past, I mean, like, do you have any specific examples if it was a British soldier? Like, is there a spot that, it's such an interesting prospect.
Yeah. So in the past, and you'll have to forgive me for what the specific examples are, but they have reinterred the individuals in or near the battlefield where they had fallen, and erected some type of monumentation there.
Got it. That makes sense. Thank you.
I do have a question. From a genetic standpoint, if you immigrated to the United States from England and you were fighting on the Patriots, there's not going to be any distinction. So would it be more based on the artifacts that were found in the burial site, or?
So there's a combination of things. This is a great question. This really gets at the point of why there is such extensive research that needs to be done. So the genetics may help kind of distinguish some individuals in terms of their background. It may fall discreetly and be obvious, but I think to your point, we were a largely English immigrant society. So what we are looking at is an isotope analysis. So in the location where you're born, your body absorbs different elements that are in the air and water, and how your body absorbs those is different depending upon where you're living and growing up. So we're hoping that we will at least know where those individuals spent the early part of their life. Once again, it's not going to be definitive. They could have grown up in England, moved here, and then joined the militia. So it's not 100%, but I think if we have several individuals who are interred and all of them show that they grew up in England, all of them are of 100% English ancestry, I think we can start to make some educated guesses that they are more likely from the British regiment than than American militia.
Mm-hmm. And coupled with any of the artifacts, the buttons, and any fabric samples or whatever else was there. I mean, it was interesting that some were clothed and some were not. So not sure exactly how that gets interpreted as
Yeah, so from what we know from Battlefield and, right after the battle, there was, they wanted to reinter individuals as fast as possible to avoid the spread of disease and other things. And so we know that it was more common to have enemy soldiers stripped of everything. And that people of rank were generally not, whether they be on, part of the militia or part of the British Army, to not be stripped of their materials as an honor. So we don't know if it's related to that. And that's why again, it'll be all the pieces of evidence coming together to help us make an inferred judgment.
Thank you. Beth, is your hand still raised or is it left over?
No, just another follow-up. I just think this is fascinating and I'm so excited that it's just interesting that there's so many people coming together to do this. So kudos to everybody that's engineered this. But just one sort of follow-up question, follow-up to follow-up. Is there a short list or a shorter list of actual individuals that a step further could even be taken, perhaps? Once there's a little bit more of a filter to understand who the people might have even been, or is that just not even?
I listen, I think we always like to have these end goals, and I think they're ranked in terms of, what are the unicorns and rainbows to what is the reality. I think we'd be very happy if we can just know whether they're British or American militia. But hopefully the DNA is not so degraded that we may be able to find ancestral lines. And we do know the names of some of the soldiers who have fallen. The town of Ridgefield is continuing to do research to identify all those names. And yeah, there is the potential that we could actually associate their remains with individuals.
Very cool. Please keep us posted.
Andy, you have another question?
Yeah, I was thinking exactly the same thing. This is my my Wikipedia level fact checking on the battle. That somehow there's the sense that there are 120 casualties total. So it's actually a rather limited universe theoretically of who that could be. And I just noticed that the historian on the group is still TBD. And it would probably be good to determine that historian sooner rather than later. I know there's plenty of people that are expert on this battle, so it shouldn't be too hard to find somebody, certainly for the Ridgefield Historical Society, but they can probably help with some of these non-genetic type questions.
Okay. Any further questions or commentary? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Beth?
Aye. Aye.
V?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
I will abstain, I guess. Tom Elmore?
Aye.
Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Andy Horowitz?
Aye.
And Sarah Nelson?
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Wish you well with the project. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item, VB2, a certified local government historic preservation enhancement grant for the town of Salisbury as a structural study of the CNE Railroad building in Lakeville. I'll read the motion. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a certified local government historic preservation enhancement grant funded by the Historic Preservation Fund of the Department of the Interior National Park Service to the below listed applicant and the amount shown. All federal and state grant guidelines and requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant is the town of Salisbury, and the project is a structural analysis to determine feasibility of potential relocation of the Central New England Railroad building from 1871, located at 7 Allen Street, Salisbury, also known as Lakeville. May I have a motion to bring it to the table for discussion?
So moved. Beth Burgess.
And a second?
Second, Sarah Nelson.
Thank you. Discussion?
We did fund, or you did award a grant for a a sort of a condition assessment. It was a site assessment. This building is situated in a kind of precarious, topologically speaking, area where it's subject to flooding and actual physical assault by trucks and things like that. And so as part of an overall town plan, they wanted to examine how best to protect this resource. And so they did hire Kroski Architects, and they did complete a study, which was included in this package. And one of their suggestions was to do just a slight elevation relocation to get it out of harm's way from both the flooding and traffic. We have been speaking with Jenny, of course, our coordinator, to make sure this doesn't have an adverse impact on its listing. And so this grant is to get the actual specifications and get further information on the feasibility and potential relocation of the Central New England Railroad building. First Selectman Curtis Rand was gonna also try to be here, but he had a 10 o'clock as well.
He's here.
Oh, he is, great.
I'm here.
Oh, awesome, great. Then he will be here to answer any questions I can't. And I believe Jenny is also on to answer questions about the NR listing.
Okay, any questions from council members?
I'd love to hear from Jenny about, what your thoughts are. And does this change anything with the listing by moving it?
I don't see Jenny on the call.
Oh, no.
Or
But
maybe Mary, if you've been talking to her,
In my conversations with Jenny, she's determined that it will have to go to the state review board to notify them. It probably will not require what's called a move document to go to the Park Service, because the planned relocation is almost within the footprint of the building. It's just a slight shift. And so it's not going to change its orientation or anything like that. So Jenny does not foresee a negative impact on its listing.
how much, I don't know if I saw the actual amount, like a couple feet kind of move, or do we know actually?
I think Curtis can probably explain it better. That'd be part of the feasibility assessment.
Thank you all. How's that for timing? I was in the woods until 5 minutes before I tuned in. The building, and it's not anyone's really fault, I guess, over the years, the town has paved and resurfaced for many decades. And that has obscured the brick top of the foundation. Maybe 3 courses are buried. So now the pavement is right up against the sills, which is terrible. And then the corners of the building, it just because of truck activity from box trucks, they keep hitting the 2 corners, and we're constantly repairing the soffit and the scalloping on it. So the building is 20 feet wide. I don't think we'd go back 20 feet. I think we might go back 14 or something like that. So it's maybe 30% within the same footprint that it is right now. I looked at it with Jenny, and she thought that would be okay. There's no change. Then we want to fully restore it. We've spent some of our own money getting an analysis of the original paint. And I think there are 6 different colors, and we've gotten rid of the aluminum storm windows and replaced them with wood. We want to replace the storm doors, and we eventually want to restore the whole building. So the move back would be on the town's dime. We'd be paying for that. But no matter what happens, it has to get lifted up, because you couldn't mill all the pavement from around it. And then planning and zoning has hired Colliers to do studies of traffic flow and pedestrian safety. And they really recommend moving it back a little bit, just to protect the building, among other things. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Sarah Nelson?
Thank you, Paul. And thank you, Curtis, for that description. This is a little bit further down the road, but thinking about when you move something and you give trucks more space, they'll take more space. Is there related site work that you're going to do that will actually give sort of a, mode is not the right word, but a no travel zone by any kind of vehicle around it?
Definitely. And we would consider some type of really landscaping, because that could, this is a high traffic area, but it's also a lot of pedestrian. And so the trucks are, they're continual, but it's not like a thoroughfare. There's 2 restaurants across the road, and that's the delivery issue. They're not like huge tractor trailers. So, and then Colliers is studying, they have a whole bunch of plans for increasing pedestrian safety and bicycles. And this building is right in the middle of all that. So yes, there will be a plan for all of it.
Great.
And again, the town's paying for that.
Yeah. Beth Burgess?
Thanks. Curtis, just a follow-up question, and I noted in the application that the final use of the building is to be determined. So it sounds like you're looking for a tenant. Are you looking for a business, or like, I'm just trying to understand. Clearly the move is required, and the widening and all the traffic studies and the pedestrian wayfinding, carefully making things safe. Just trying to look at the overall picture for the building.
There are 2 things I can answer there. We decided as a town and through planning and zoning and the Board of Selectmen that we never want to sell the building. We're not really interested in renting it as commercial space. There are 3 local nonprofits involved in historical preservation and lake and watershed, because this is kind of the gateway into the whole lake area. And they're all interested in using part of it as a sort of public space. It's not a big building, but it's big enough to absorb 2 or 3 places. And then there's a Lakeville Conservancy group that's very interested in having long-term use of it.
Great.
So, but we would talk to you about that, because we'd really, if possible, like to come back once it's moved for some funding to help restore it. It's even got the original sort of sculpted plywood seating from the 30s with the brass tacks on it inside. It's
cool.
It's quite a building.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Beth Ackley?
I just circling back, if you wouldn't mind, Curtis, to the move, just to really understand it in my head. First, the idea with the move of 14 feet now is not to rotate it, right? So you're achieving the distance from the traffic by moving it, and the rotation piece was a separate consideration.
We're not rotating.
Yeah, okay, so actually, that has some benefits, and then it's in the same orientation that it had been. And then the sort of follow-up question to that is, in which direction relative to the tracks is it moving? Is it moving closer, and are the tracks still there?
That's great. The tracks are long gone. And they're never to come back, because the tracks go through all the development through all the houses into Millerton, New York, backyards and stuff. It's not coming back. There are houses on it, but and that whole trackway was deeded to property owners after the town rejected ownership of it in the maybe late 50s or early 60s. But so the track went behind the building, and now it's just a concrete area with a picnic table and some refuse cans back there. So the thought on the rotating was that that's a more interesting facade. And if we could spin it, that facade would be facing the public, because we're moving it to the back of the building. But Jen was correct. The tracks went behind it. So I guess we'd infringe into that area, maybe 8 feet or something into where the track, but there's a 6-foot overhang. So that actually the overhang would be over where the track went. Probably, because I'm assuming the train was pretty close to the building as a landing. And the other thing is, one of the things we'd like to study in this is the strength of the bricks, because there are 3 courses of bricks on top of an old stone foundation. And that's what you saw was the bricks. And Jenny would like us to study that. We'd love to reuse those if possible as the new top of a foundation.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments from councils? I have a couple of questions. So by relocating the building to, I guess, the north towards Route 44, it will be kind of in the alignment of the old track. And then you need a retaining wall behind that because the grade drops down quite a bit. It was indicated on one of the study drawings.
We wouldn't be going that far. We wouldn't be going to where anything on the back of the building was too close to that grade. But if a retaining wall was recommended, we'd definitely do that.
Mm-hmm.
There are 2 trees, large pine trees that we would take down, but we would probably do that anyway because they're leaning into the building. But again, the overhang is what's going to be nearer to the drop off. But we don't want to go back quite that far.
Okay. Had there been any discussion of actually shifting the entire building over onto the corner of Holly and Allen at the end of the pond?
We'd
just
love
put it on the opposite side of the track.
That, but I don't know if Jen thought that was a great idea. I think that might jeopardize our standing.
My concern is just that by moving it back over the track, you're kind of losing the relationship of the building to the tracks, and compromising that space kind of does change the reading of the building. But it would be an interesting discussion to have with Jenny if she was here to see what would happen with that, because then it really becomes an amenity instead of feeling like it's in the middle of a parking lot and up against that grade change. And you would still maintain the alignment of, the railroad ramble comes across on the east side, and then I guess Ethan Allen Street was the old rail alignment. So that trail alignment could continue right past the building versus being compromised on that rear zone that you'd be encroaching into.
I don't think she was so happy about doing that. So
we can run that by her, and if it were to be that significant a move, then there would have to be a study done to make sure it could stay on the national. So that may be why Jenny was comfortable with just this shift to protect the resource and maintain its listing. But we could certainly.
Right, because I know we're always concerned about the context, right?
Yeah.
So if the context changes and you're actually putting the building on the old rail line, then you lose that important relationship of a railroad building serving the railroad track. It's just a question. And then just from the general, zooming out, big picture issue, where are the box trucks coming from, and is there a solution of controlling access? Because Ethan Allen Street is a dead-end street, and are they just coming through off of 44 down Holly Street and looping through to come out, or is there another way of controlling vehicular circulation through this zone to kind of avoid conflicts even with the building where it currently is?
We're talking about making Holly Street one way.
You're good at that.
Down the hill from 44.
Mm-hmm.
But they're coming from 41, these trucks. And it's not a lot of trucks, but when they have a bad driver, they clip the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And the hideous guardrails we put up there aren't really helpful that much. I mean, they are, but
Right.
So we can, I mean, and we're not, I think planning and zoning wants to not have more traffic. They just want to have controlled traffic, and a lot of the
Correct.
area would be pedestrian, not more trucking.
Mhm.
So if anything, they would probably shrink that road eventually, that whole intersection, and force deliveries to be a little more sensitive.
Right. I mean, just from the Google Earth view, you kind of see where the tire marks are, and there's a lot of paving to the left of the building, and it seems like
Right.
everybody is really kind of making that really tight curve versus making it a 90-degree traffic intersection
Yeah,
kind of along the face of the restaurant zone. Then you'd be keeping people away from the building, and they would have made the turn,
right.
very clear of the structure.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
we would do landscaping all around this building as needed, and putting up a nice old stone wall or anything that was recommended or would be a good idea. We're open to anything that is recommended.
So it might just be good to have a traffic diagram of if you made a traditional 90-degree intersection
Mhm.
from Holly Street to the travel lane in front of
Mhm.
the restaurants, and did
Mhm.
something as a landscape strategy to keep people far
Mhm.
away. Because right now, with the sea of asphalt that's there, it's just begging, the conflicts with the building. So
Right. Right. Is that something Krusky could probably help us with, I would think, or Colliers, who's doing the work for P&Z?
yeah, probably Colliers. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any further questions,
Yeah.
comments? I don't see any, so we'll proceed to a vote. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
V,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
I'll abstain. Tom Elmore,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
and Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you very much, and looking forward to see what the solution ends up being.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Next item is 5B3, Historic Restoration Fund grant for the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center, and we'll see Beth in a little bit. At 77 Forest Street in Hartford in the amount of $200,000. I'll read the motion. Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below-listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below-listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant is the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center at 77 Forest Street, Hartford, and the project is repairs to the Carriage House Visitor Center slate roof, repointing of brick masonry, restoration of windows, exterior trim repair and painting, mechanical system upgrades, and ADA compliant entry doors and restrooms. The amount is $200,000. Can I have a motion and support?
I'll make a motion, Tom.
And a second?
V, I'll second.
Thank you, V. Discussion?
So I don't need to go off mute.
No, you can
Okay.
right into the owl.
Good morning. So the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center has received several grants from our office in the past, and they are carefully undertaking a major $1 million restoration of the full campus. This grant applies specifically to the visitor center. The funds will assist with making the property ADA accessible and upgrading the HVAC. We did notice this morning that the large bid document file in OneDrive did not include the drawings that they referenced. The drawings were placed in OneDrive this morning, and so we ask that if council members have questions about the drawings, they contact me within the 90-day period that applicants have to finalize the bid and construction documents. And the Stowe Center's grant writer, Cynthia Cormier, is on the call, and project architect from Kroski Architects, Dave Goslin, is also on the call to help with any questions. Thank you.
Anyone from the council would like to start questions?
I had a question. There was a budget. I'm not sure exactly who put the budget together, but there was also two quotations. One was for the window doors and one was for the masonry. And I noticed that the budget and the quotation were significantly far apart. So for example, I think there was $71,000 that was budgeted for the masonry restoration, but the quotation that came in was I'm not sure. I think it was significantly higher. So I'm just curious to see what happens when the actual cost exceeds what was budgeted.
Sure. So this grant is for the max amount for the Historic Restoration Fund at $200,000. So if it does come in higher, the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center would need to dip into some of their other project funds to cover that amount. But we can't exceed the $200,000. So I think even if the quote came back higher, they would just have to work with that number.
Okay.
Okay, Beth Ackley.
Yeah, thanks. I had a quick question. Hi, Dave. The Cronenberger quotes I noticed were actually on the bid forms. Was that just kind of a convenience thing? Because it was formed, or did it go out to bid already? Or just curious how it's proceeded so far.
Good morning. Cindy, can you respond to this question? Because the project has gone out to bid through a CM, and he did get it to a bunch of subcontractors. So we do have cost estimates that came in, but Cindy can speak to the question better than I can.
Yes, work began on the study back in 2019, but we've got other DECD funds already in hand, along with the National Endowment of Humanities grant in hand. So we put the project out to bid on June 7th. It was our first public opening. We didn't get enough bids at that time to make it competitive. So we had a second public bid opening on August 10th. So we do now have bids in hand that we will be sharing with our grant manager and construction specialist at DECD next week, so that we can move the project forward and start the construction in April. Now the project schedule is hoping to start April 1st, 2014.
Great, thanks. Erin, is that all copacetic with the grant requirements?
Yeah, so from my understanding with other people at DECD through capital projects and some other projects where they received funding, they went out to bid for other parts of the project, and this specific part hasn't gone out to bid yet. So I think that they were just responding on the bid forms as part of the other DECD projects, and put the budget justification in this bid form as well. So they haven't gone out to bid for this specific project. I think there's a lot of moving pieces, and that's why it looks kind of confusing with all of these documents, but they haven't gone against bidding, procedure protocol here.
I think I had the same question you had, Elizabeth, which was I noticed that some of the bid documents is on the form. So there was a big document, it's easier that everybody use the same one. So it's easy to compare the pricing as it comes in, because the roofing or the restoration price was a completely different proposal than the remaining quotes that you received.
Yeah.
But you answered the question because you went out to bid 2 different times. So that's fine for me.
Okay, so thank you, Paul. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but I just want to clarify something. So the bids that were received, that were included in our agenda packet, are for this particular structure or not for this particular structure?
I believe they used bid forms and to use as budget justification to show the council members an estimated budget. But this specific project hasn't gone out to bid.
Okay. All right. So then if it hasn't gone out to bid, but we haven't seen the drawings yet. And Aaron, you said people could forward comments to you within the 90-day review period. Paul, the thing I would be concerned about is we are a public body, public review. And if in fact, when people review the drawings, they do have comments, it feels like it shouldn't be sort of one-off comments being forwarded. I don't know whether you want to convene a subcommittee who could review the drawings and then respond on behalf of the council in order to maintain sort of transparency.
Sure.
And, you know, Aaron, in some of the emails that I saw kind of quickly going back and forth, you alluded to the fact that it was hard to, you couldn't get the drawings to upload to OneDrive, and because it was, I believe, because it was combined with other material. You can be asking your applicants to provide you with individual contract document drawings and contract document project manual sort of as separately on your submissions. That's something that architects do anyway, just for future. Because as you've probably heard from us before, the drawings and the project manual, they're complementary. And so the scope of a project is not understood by one or the other. It needs to be, you have to see both items together.
Thank you. Understood.
I do want to clarify though, the bids that have gone out are for the work on the visitor center that we would like to start in April. These are for masonry repair, carpentry repair, front door, gypsum wallboard, flooring, plumbing, heating. We've been working on this project to get it to this point, as you might imagine, getting the specs and drawings from Dave Gosling, doing a lot of fundraising to get it. This piece is part of a bigger project we're doing with site improvements, and we'd hoped to do another house, the day house, but we don't have enough funding. So that whole project's been deferred. This visitor center project is the most important project for the Stowe Center, and the funds we've raised to date are for it, but we need additional funding to complete it. And if we don't have it, we've been working with our construction manager on value engineering and limiting the scope of the work, because you can only, you know, we can't go over budget.
I think the way to ensure that it meets the bidding procedures is that none of the bids have been awarded. And so there's still time to go back, revise the bid documents, taking into consideration any council's comments or questions before going back to the applicant, because there are some other forms that will be needed. So essentially you've got budget justification numbers, but you haven't awarded any bid.
Exactly.
No, we have not signed any contracts. You haven't done, you know, any of that. And you could always issue the bid documents that we revised to other companies to get competitive bids as well.
So Sarah, procedurally, I'm in agreement with having the little subcommittee and consolidating a list of any questions that we have to you know, respond back to Aaron going through. Since their construction schedule is in April, is it something that we can do by the next general meeting of the council, or just submit them to Aaron? Just trying to get the procedural methodology down, so that if we can approve the funding and concept with a follow-up of any comments that we have from the subcommittee. Is that acceptable, or should we postpone the official approval until the next meeting?
Can I jump in with a question, just quickly? Is that okay, Paul?
Sure.
So is it possible that council members could submit questions to me, and if there are, because there's a chance that there might not be any, is it possible that I can kind of compile them and present them at the next meeting if there are comments? I'm just not sure that there will be at this time, so I don't know if we need to schedule something yet.
Well, Erin, I think getting council members, whoever is the appointed subcommittee to review the drawings in concert with the project manual, is something that could happen between now and the next meeting, and depending upon the chair's direction, they could be submitting their compiled comments, if there are some, to you. And Paul, Tom, if you want to deputize the committee to speak on behalf of the council, and make your review, your vote conditional upon the review of the subcommittee. You could do that. Tom, is there any other way you can think of around this?
Well, do you remember when we had, say, 12 HRF grants, we broke it up into 3 different groups, and each of the groups listed their questions for each of the applications, and then one person from each group presented that discussion at the next meeting to expedite the review process. I would be in favor of doing that here versus submitting the comments without the council's review or input in advance.
It makes sense to have, a discussion among the small group and consolidate it, and then submit those as one document rather than a group of individual emails back and forth.
And Paul, what we did when I was chair and we had that many applications, we set up a Zoom meeting. Everybody reviewed everything in advance, and then the 3 or 4 of us got together as a group and then finalized that. And somebody was directed to be, quote unquote, the leader or whatever, the liaison for the group. And it just worked out really well. It was a good way to keep things moving fast.
That seems to be a reasonable accommodation. Do I have volunteers to be on the committee, or how do we assign people in the past?
I'd be more than happy to be on it.
And oftentimes people who knew that they had expertise in an area related to the particular application would be volunteering to be on that review committee.
So Tom, Beth Ackley, would you?
Sure. Yep.
And Sarah?
Sure.
And Dee, would you like to be involved in that, or are you okay with what you've seen so far?
I'm okay. But if I need to, let me know. It just depends on the time I'm traveling this week.
Okay. So Beth Ackley, Tom Elmore, Sarah Nelson, and I'll jump on as well. And we can get those relatively soon. We just need a chance to review the documents, because the quotes were tied to specific items in the drawings.
I'm sorry, are we going to do this and then submit comments to council and to staff, but to review it at the next meeting? Or are you thinking you want to review this, submit comments and comments to council and staff before the next meeting, and then let this application proceed without coming back to the table?
We could do it either way. I mean, I think there's probably general support for the project. It's just any technical questions of specific details. I think that would be my gist. If anybody else has a different opinion, please express that. But like to at least keep it moving along if we can. You know, their schedule is in April, but I'm sure they would like to have this kind of in their arsenal of funding sources to leverage other funding sources as well. So the sooner. I don't, from what I've looked at, you know, briefly, and you know, since the drawings were posted this morning, they seem to be very, very thorough. But just being able to correlate the quotes with the actual scope and formulating any questions we have, I think, would not change the ultimate vote as to whether or not we would be funding the project. At least.
And I also mentioned that I had the time to spend on the plans this morning. I think those questions that I had was just making sure that the bids are comparing and that there's enough funding in there. But the plans were pretty detailed, and I didn't go through 100% of it, but I think that 60% that I went through very quickly. They seem to be in good shape. So if the team can just finalize the remaining items that is been in question, it should be good to go. I'll also finish reviewing it and I'll email you my questions if anything else comes up. So
Sarah, do we need a separate motion to establish the committee or modify the motion to say that it's subject to supplemental questions from the council?
Yeah, you would need to modify the motion so that it would be subject to the review of the designated subcommittee.
Do you have some magic wording?
Let's see.
I can reread the existing motion.
Okay.
That helps. The Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. I'm assuming we would insert something at that point, because then it goes on to say all grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development.
It's what you're really saying is subject to the review of the designated subcommittee.
Yeah, I propose to keep it simple like that.
So subject to review of documents. Should we insert that there? Okay, so I'll read the modified motion. That the Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend the award of a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. This will be subject to review of documents by the designated subcommittee.
Approval is subject to the review.
Okay. So the last sentence would read, approval is subject to review of documents by the designated subcommittee. And then continues, all grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of grant, as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development, and the applicant Harriet Beecher Stowe Center, 77 Forest Street, Hartford. Project repairs to the Carriage House Visitor Center, slate roof, repointing of brick masonry, restoration of windows, exterior trim, repair and painting, mechanical systems upgrade, and ADA compliant entry doors and restrooms in the amount of $200,000. Okay.
I make a motion to revise the motion as presently stated.
And I'll second that. And Paul, just so you know that this motion supersedes the previous motion.
Okay.
Which is just, it's the way it works.
Okay. So we don't have to approve the motion to, and then we don't have to have two votes. We just have one vote. Is that correct? Or?
Well, yes. Well, we actually, hold on. We've just, if I've,
your motion is to approve the modified language, and then we vote on. Okay.
Exactly.
Very good. So our first vote to approve the motion presented by Sarah to modify the language. Start with Beth Ackley.
Aye.
V.
Aye.
Beth Burgess has recused herself. I will abstain, I guess. Tom Elmore.
Aye.
Leah. Is Leah still with us? Jonathan, is Leah still here?
I don't see her, Paul. She may have signed, she may have dropped off.
Andy Horowitz
Aye.
and Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
So we have 5 ayes, 1 absent, 1 abstain. I guess I can move to a yay for that. And 1 recusal, so that motion passes. Now the actual approval of the revised language. Beth Ackley.
Aye.
V.
Aye.
And Beth Burgess is recused. I will also vote yay on this. Tom Elmore.
Aye.
Leah is not here. Andy Horowitz.
I am
Oh.
here. I just called in because I don't know, I can't seem to get on. I got knocked off and I don't know what's going on with the internet right now. So, but I'll abstain because I didn't hear any of the
Okay.
discussion.
And Andy
Aye.
and Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes as amended. Thank you very much. And we will get together our subcommittee and get the comments back to you in the near future.
Paul,
Okay.
Paul, sorry.
Yes.
Cindy has a question.
Oh, Cindy, yes.
Yeah, so in terms of timing, is this something that you'll decide before the next meeting, or will we know at the next meeting?
I'm sure we will have it before the next meeting, correct,
Okay.
Sarah?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, just before we get on to the next agenda item.
Yes.
And this is a conversation with Aaron. So I want to make sure with these HRF grants that the protocol is that we still get the drawings and the specifications for review beforehand. There was some email alluding to just approving the concept only, and this project under construction manager has got scoping packages that have been bid out already. So can we just clarify with these HRF grant applications what SHPO's expectation is and what council's expectation is about what we review and when? Because this is not an ideal way to do it after the fact.
You want any staff precedent, or are you guys gonna decide? I mean, whatever.
No, it's with staff input. Yeah.
Oh, and I'm just speaking, just because I've been here longer. It has varied, Sarah. I know that, at one point, we were not actually requiring construction level, plans and specs. But obviously a very thorough scope of work, and some level of drawings. And then once the grant was awarded, it was, staff as a whole would review the final bid documents before they went out to bid, and that would happen within 90 days of award of the grant. I do know, that since HBC has recently been funding, applications for plans and specs for projects that intend to go to HRF, you know, we've been finding that, well, as long as we're giving them the money, we might as well take them as far as they can. So in this particular case, I think you mentioned something had already gone out to bid. I'm not sure what no, okay. So a thorough scope of work and, a level of documentation that doesn't rise to construction has been the norm in the past. But you know, whatever makes the council comfortable, I guess is the best way to go.
Well, there've been many iterations and you're right, Mary, and you know, we were using design development before and then when there wasn't funding and the projects became smaller, they weren't projects that rose to the level of requiring perhaps extensive project documents. But when the threshold of the grant went back up again and we were dealing with sort of multidisciplinary, more complicated projects, then we went back to the subcommittee process that Tom was talking about, so that we were reviewing the documents thoroughly. And I felt like we needed a conversation about where we are at this particular moment in time and what the process is going to be.
I think that would help everybody, so.
Yeah.
What you and Aaron bought it.
Yeah, I'm happy to just, you know, whatever is helpful when you review it to provide.
I can share a little bit of a thought that I have just to fuel the conversation here. You know, whether it's design development or full CDs is just I think a decision to make. And it could go either way, but I do think it's important to be able to, and it sometimes looks different for different projects, have enough information that council can really take a bite out of it to understand it, take a little bit of a deep dive in it to understand. And I know that this has probably changed over time a little bit too with council, but as we started doing, I guess that was last summer, and really, or I don't know if that was started, but certainly as we were doing last summer, when the grants were coming in quarterly, you know, just whatever the level is, it is not 100% relevant, but just that there's data so that we can fully understand the application and be able to comment on it. So that's all kinds of gray for you, but that's my thought.
And I'll just chime in, Sarah, under our new business item, we do have a discussion about HPC training requests. So maybe we can bring this up again as as part of that discussion for grant requirements and things of that nature. So I think that'll be helpful. Any further discussions on this? Hearing none, I guess we can move to our next item. Thank you all. Item 7, local historic district property study reports for the Greenwich Historic District Commission on Bruce
I'm so
Park.
sorry, what about new action items? I guess I must have missed that.
There's nothing on that for that.
So where would I be?
You're
Item 7.
Sorry, thank you.
That's okay.
Sorry.
No problem. Pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes, Section 7-147, subsection QC, the Historic Preservation Council votes to recommend approval of the proposed ordinance and boundary for the proposed Bruce Park, Greenwich, Connecticut, as presented in the study report transmitted by the Town of Greenwich Historic District Commission on September 25th, 2023. Do you have a motion for discussion? Anyone?
Sarah Nelson, so moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great.
Thank you. Discussion?
Hey, hi, everybody, again. We did one of these at the last meeting, so hopefully you're familiar with the process, but these reports are submitted to us under state enabling legislation that allows municipalities to identify what is historically or architecturally significant in their specific community, and then put in place local legislation to protect those resources. So your charge under state statute is to comment on the boundary and ordinance but also any other questions or comments that you have as you read the report. I will point out, staff, recommends that you favorably vote on this application or study report. But I do want to point out on page 2, the list of resources and the fact that they're described as contributing or non-contributing, and in local historic district and local property reports, there is no contributing or non-contributing. Everything that falls within the boundary of the property or district falls under review of the local commission, whether it was built in 2020 or 1920 or 1820. So that is one comment that I will be passing on to the commission, just so that they know that everything is subject to review. Ann Young and Andrew Melillo with the town are here, with the Historic District Commission are here to if you have any questions of them before you comment.
So Mary, your distinction between the contributing and non-contributing, some of them are listed as, sculptures. So would it be that they are potentially temporarily located objects within the district that may not be subject to local, you can't move that sculpture because it's in the historic district, or I guess clarify what their intent was for saying a contributing or non-contributing.
And they could probably speak to it. They probably listed it as non-contributing because it's age and also probably its lack of association with the history and architecture of the park. Mm-hmm. But if it falls within the boundaries, if someone does want to move it, they do have to submit a certificate of appropriateness application. That doesn't mean they can't move it. It just means it does have to go before the commission for review and a decision. Modern or not modern, but more recent.
Yeah, contemporary versus
it
period
does
of significance.
And it does sometimes make it more complicated on how to review these things, but it does fall under the review.
But maintaining that designation within their document may help understand the original intent of creating the district, correct?
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, keeping it in versus eliminating it may help, someone in the future to say, okay, well, there was a different attitude about that. If
you mean not listing it all,
maintaining their designation of contributing and non-contributing for future reviews of a certificate of certificate of appropriateness. It's like when this area was designated, the intent was that it wasn't part of the period of significance or whatever. So there may be, support for saying, something can be done because it has that sub-designation.
Sure. I understand what you're saying. It does clarify. It helps to clarify what the town finds significant architecturally or historically about the resource that they want to designate. Yes. I think just from a planning perspective, you can't, spot things out, everything falls within the boundary, but that might obviously, especially since some of these non-contributing or most of them are sculptures. So that might make the process go more smoothly. If it's documented like this, I think I would suggest using something different than contributing, or not contributing though, because those are terms used in the National Register. Sorry, something in my throat.
Tom Elmore, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, Mary, question for you, and I think maybe this is building off of what Paul was asking, but I'm not sure. Does this or will this designation make it difficult for them to do future improvements, either on a casual basis, on a large scale, say a dredging project, or if they want to put in a ball field? Does the designation prevent any of this, or does it just mean that they have to go in front of their municipal commissions for approvals.
Yeah, it doesn't prevent it, but it does require review. And you'll, you'll notice that the first site is listed as contributing and it's actually open space. It's the former site of an historic resource. And I imagine it is included in the boundary so that any new construction will be reviewed by the commission if new construction is suggested. It's important for the commission, the local historic district commission, to, you know, keep in mind what is considered historically and architecturally significant, so that if, for example, someone wants to put a baseball park in there, they can decide whether that's appropriate or not based on the history of the park. If there is a history of recreation, like, you know, I thought I saw a baseball field from 1929, then it might be appropriate, you know. So
Do they have to come back in front of you and other staff, or is it all quote unquote in-house municipal
it's
level?
all, yeah, it's all local at the municipal level. We don't have any purview.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Andy, you have a question?
I do. I have two small questions about the history that's described here. One, I was just intrigued that there are references to a renamed Indian Chase Drive and to Indian Field Road, and I was curious if there was an indigenous history here and if the town knows anything about it. That's my first question.
I'm gonna have to defer to Ann or
This is Ann Young. May I go ahead and speak to that?
You're getting a lot of feedback.
May I go ahead and speak to the question about the Native American heritage in Greenwich?
Yes, you may. And your name again?
My first name is Ann, and the last name is Young, Y-O-U-N-G.
Thank you.
Greenwich certainly does have a very strong Native American heritage. When the founding fathers came, there is documentation that yes, they were welcome at one point to the town, but unfortunately, because of the various skirmishes either between the British and or Dutch, Native Americans were eventually pushed out of the facility or out of the town. There's been quite a bit of archaeological digs at Greenwich Point, sometimes known as Todd's Point, where they landed. However, in this particular part of Greenwich, there has not been as great research. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just hasn't had that opportunity to be discovered yet. So I think it would be a wonderful opportunity if one of the comments from your commission would be to begin exploring something like this. And certainly with the designation, I think we can ensure that, you know, we don't have to do a haphazard job with, you know, a timing element, because if the whole park is protected, then we can do a good job doing some, you know, possible archaeological digs. What I'd like to do, if it's possible, is also allow Andrew Melillo, who is incredibly well versed in the town's history, to speak to this as well.
Hi. Yep. Sorry, I'm juggling two things at once. Give me 1 second. You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I had to escape from my office desk real quick, but I've been listening the whole time. Yeah, the Native American history is very interesting. It's definitely, as Ann said, to piggyback off her comment, not extensively researched in Bruce Park, and I think this designation would definitely help be more proactive in researching and exploring that history in the ground over there. But yeah, there was various tribes. You know, the first deed lists all of them, and most of the the Indian chiefs or sachems at the time that signed the first deed in 1640 have streets named after them all throughout town. And then you also have the complications of Indian history where, you know, we have Dutch maps saying we had a Sinowoi tribe, and that tribe never existed in the area, but was just a misnomer. But we still have tons of streets named after that name. So it's a rich history, but not a pleasant one after a certain point in time between the first settlers and the natives. But this would be a really welcome opportunity to do and protect an untouched, I shouldn't say untouched because it's gone through many developments over the decades, but an opportunity to see what's there, because absolutely there was a large Indian presence there from early on. So, and it's, you know, the park has drastically changed over the years from a swamp with a covered wooden bridge to you know, more filled in park with I-95 going through it. So trying to salvage what's left of it.
Thank you.
I mean, I can go on more about the native history, but I don't want to take up too much of your time.
No, because I asked the question, I'll just say I really appreciate the answer, and I appreciate your interest in hearing that we believe that that's interesting. What sparked my comment was just that I saw the place names within the park as described in your report: Indian Chase Drive and Indian Field Drive. And
It's it's very common because one of the first names of that area, that peninsula, from the first settlers was Indian Field. So the name Indian just kind of stuck after a while, and everything around the area is Indian Field, Indian Land. You know, you have, it's in so many names. So it was, that area was originally named by the Indian common land, Indian Neck.
My second question is related, just again, welcoming your interest in preserving and learning more about Greenwich's history in this moment. Robert Bruce is consistently referred to as a cotton magnate, and of course a cotton magnate from, you know, in the early 19th century was likely involved in one way or another with enslaved people, and it would be interesting. I mean, certainly we celebrate and cast in a positive light his philanthropy, but especially lurking in this application, I think quite appropriately, is the sense that Greenwich is distinguished by as being a town for well-to-do people, largely, and that this was a place where people could move, as the language says, something to the effect of from away from the crowded city and into more comfortable homes and plots. And thinking about the source of some of that wealth, presents the opportunity to do that too. So I think my question is just, as you learn more about the history of the park and the man who gave it, I'd be curious personally to know more about Robert Bruce himself and the source of his cotton magnate wealth in the 19th century.
I can start.
Yeah, you go. You take that one, and not me.
Finding the history of Robert Bruce has been challenging at best. I know one of the other significant naming institutions that he helped to evolve was Bruce Museum. And a few years ago, they had pulled together, you know, quite a strong biography. And it still did not really bring to fruition what had happened in Mr. Bruce's youth. And the term that I mean by youth is probably the first 30 years of his life. I was delighted when I found out his association with I believe it was the Astor family, the Astor Vanderbilt family, which, you know, through his mother's side. And, you know, there were numerous associations with his being related to Robert the Bruce. Of course, no one could substantiate that other than, you know, it sounded great. And of course, it really alluded to, you know, some many magnificent doings. So I would say the more that things get digitized and the more, genealogy, picks up and is able to disseminate reliable information, there is an audience out there who is desperately curious about certain questions. Was his past reputable? Did he have, quote unquote, any skeletons in the closet? Judging by his family life and his philanthropy, I would say no. He was basically a very private man, devoted to his daughters, and consequently having moved out to Greenwich and seeing what suburban life can be like, he was just very, very passionate that all levels of community be able to enjoy it. He donated the town hall to Greenwich, and he certainly was hoping to be able to alleviate some of the sufferings of working class women by having them be able to come out. He was also concerned about health. He had devoted one of the first tuberculosis pavilions more towards the backcountry portion of Greenwich. He really was, a far-sighted man of the times for his day. Today, I don't know if he would stand out as much, considering the wonderful way that philanthropy has really been spreading about in all sorts of areas of human interest. But back then, what he was doing was fairly revolutionary. And, I think one of the things that we can really do to honor his amazing gifts to history is really to protect this park so it really is enjoyed by all levels of the community.
I'll just add, thank you for that. And I am absolutely on board with your application to preserve the park. And I just want to clarify that examining the source of a philanthropist's wealth is not a matter of asking how reputable they are, nor is it a question of looking for skeletons in the closet, nor would it diminish the value of the park today. It would be none of those things. Rather, the same sort of care that is lavished here on the types of trees, for example, in the park, which simply provides a richer, characterization of the historic resource, where I'm simply encouraging that same level of attention, of a kind of clinical descriptive attention to the source of a philanthropist's wealth. The story does not start with the gift. And certainly the idea of his being a generous philanthropist would, I think, it gives us no information about the source of his money. It doesn't tell us if he inherited it from John Jacob Astor's opium and fur dealings, or if he, developed it himself doing, curing diseases. We have no idea. And it wouldn't, it doesn't discredit the park in any way. It is to add information about how the world is made, which is what these sort of historic research is meant to do.
Thank you, Andy. Leah, you have questions.
Yeah, now I echo a lot of the points that Andy has made. I also was just looking, though, at this, and it was in my mind that the significance of this is a park, and there's a lot of excellent local history here, but I would love to see, because significance is so tied to context, this is, very much a public park in the vein of the progressive, era and designed. In the design, there's reference to a civil engineer, but I'd love to know what his background was, because he wasn't a landscape architect, whether it's connected or informed by, all the other park builders at the time. But this is all out of this, urban parks come out of this industrial era, and it's a response to the ills of industrial society, and it's just in a much bigger context. Greenwich is obviously one of cities around the country, so I would just love to see a broader source and just broader context, because that's what gets us to the real significance of the park as a park in its design. That it maybe is a representative of that design, or maybe it's an exceptional example in some cases.
Thank you,
But
Leah.
yeah, when we're like saving stuff, it just seems we need to do more than just say this is important to our community, that we really need that history.
Any further comments or questions from the council members? I think Andy and you still have your hand raised. Okay. All right. Well, shall we move to the vote? Beth Hackley,
Aye.
V,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
I'll abstain. Tom Elmore,
Aye.
Leah. I saw your mouth move, but you're muted.
Aye.
Okay. Andy,
Aye.
and Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving right along. Question for Jonathan. Is Todd going to mention anything at this point
I
for
believe that
item 9?
He's coming down.
Yeah, I'm not coming down, but I'm here. I'm
Thank you,
here. And I can answer any questions. But I will just make the statement that there are no other threatened properties except what will be on the agenda next Wednesday, 80 Shore Road in Waterford. And I'm happy to answer any broad or brief questions about the process, but briefly, this just came to us. The demolition delay permit is 60 days. It's actually 30 plus 30 if someone objects. The objection came at a period of time so that the extra 30 days only gives us to November 26th. That's why we have to act swiftly if we're going to have an opportunity for a discussion for a potential referral to the AG's office, and if it is referred, for the Office of the Attorney General to have enough time to prepare a temporary injunction.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have a question. Todd, based on the email that Jonathan sent out, knowing that you've had such short notice and we're going to be convening next Wednesday, is there sufficient time to get all of the information to us in a timely manner to do a proper SEPA review by council?
Yep. So we are going to submit at the end of the day today what we have. This is a particular instance where the structural integrity or adaptively reuse of the existing site is not particularly in question because it was lived in 2 months ago or 3 months ago. So there's no, and I've talked to the owner, he's not questioning that it structurally has deficiencies. And while we will not have enough time to get, for instance, ask, Kroski Architects to come take a look for adaptively reusing the site, it's a single family home now. It could be a single family home next week. So we're not bringing, adaptively reuse alternatives because its current use fits the definition of a feasible alternative.
Gotcha. And what about the public's input?
Oh, they will have an opportunity to speak.
I guess my question pertains to having them sign petitions and getting.
Oh yeah,
all
we wouldn't have done this unless we had an outstanding, overwhelming amount. I think there are 500 signatures already and like 20 something letters. And it just started Friday and today's Wednesday. So we decided on Monday morning when we had over 400 signatures over the weekend. Friday afternoon, I think there was 100 signatures. By Monday morning, we had over 400. And to date, I think I have 22 letters, 23 or 24 of support. So it was enough for us to say, let's do the investigation. We recognize that time is short. We have reached out to the owner. We have, officially invited them to participate. I'm expecting the owner to participate. But he, when I talked to him a couple of times yesterday, he said he's going to talk to his lawyer before he lets us know what he's going to do. Again, this moved really quick and, we want to give the the council as much information as we can with as much time as possible so that you have an opportunity to review the materials. This isn't going to be our regular 400-page packet that we submit to you guys because the actual prudent and feasible alternative is its current use. So we don't have drawings, Dave Gosling's or Beth or Jim Grant are not going to be asked to do a structural analysis. There's no question that it's structurally fine. So, we're going to get as much information as we can get for you guys. And we intend to submit it at the end of the day today.
Great. Thank you. That was helpful. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And just one quick question, Todd, has the owner provided any more information about what their intent is other than they put in a demolition permit?
Yes. Do you want me to go? I'm happy to share if you guys would like, but I spoke with the owner 2 times yesterday, probably totaling an hour or an hour and a half total time on the phone with him discussing the process that we have and that's in front of him, the law, how it works, and his intentions, and if there's any opportunity for him to pivot to, keep the main block of the building or, portions of other buildings on site.
Can I just cut you off for a second?
Absolutely.
And Sarah, I'm going to ask for some help here. I would prefer that where this conversation is going, wait until next week. Just so everybody that's going to be party to this is privy to all of the information.
I agree too.
Okay.
I was just answering.
Yeah, I know. And I don't mean to cut you off or be rude, but
no, that's fine. That's fine. No, again, we have a process, and this is a little out of order. But
and that information will be included in the materials I distribute to council members in preparation for the meeting. So that's the main missing piece of information from our conversation on Monday.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You're welcome. No problem.
It's okay. Thank you. Tom, your hand's still raised. Thank you. Moving on to Jonathan's portion, item 11, the report on the State Historic Preservation Office.
Thank you, Paul. I have a very brief report today, just because we have some additional items in the new business section. I'll just keep this brief. I just wanted to share with everyone that we're very excited to announce that we have officially hired a new GIS analyst to manage the new Concrete system as it moves forward and moves on to the full rollout. Mr. Kevin Berger is going to be starting with our office on Monday, November 13th. And he comes to us with GIS experience at the municipal level in several locations, including the city of Hartford, and most recently as a GIS analyst for Eversource Energy. So we look forward to introducing you to Kevin at our December meeting and hopefully moving forward with some training on that system as he gets up to speed and starts rolling out some training opportunities. And I will save the discussion for the schedule for 2024 and SEPA training for the new business section. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Liz, item 12, report of municipal properties.
Yeah, a couple things. So museum season is over, yay, or boo, depending on how you're feeling. We ended this past weekend, and I don't have the stats yet, but I'm really happy. We really closed with quite a bang. I'll just briefly tell you that at Old Newgate, if you manage to hit the Light into the Dungeon event, this is the second year of the event. And this year we cleared over $50,000. Actually, I think it is almost $60,000. And the vendor actually made a profit this year. So we're really exciting. It was sold out nearly every open day. And we had over 1,000 visitors to the museum for the last 2 weekends. Even people who couldn't get tickets to the jack-o'-lantern display were buying reduced tickets that we were offering just to come in and see the museum and not even go into the mine. So that was exciting. At the Eric Sloan Museum on October 21st, we had 512 people pre-sales to the museum's Touch a Trade event, which is the second year that we've been doing that. And Andrew Rowand, our curator there, his comment is just lots and lots of families and so many kids. The rain held off all day, but there were, between the Connecticut Antique Machinery Association and the Sloan Museum, the Connecticut CAMA is a partner, we had 30 presentation stations up of all kinds of different crafts people. So that was really excited. Thanks to the SHPO team who were there having a booth. And it's really exciting because when new vendors come, they get really excited about the Sloan Museum. So the next partnership we have on track is the Timber Framers Guild, which could be really exciting for multiple properties that we own. And then at the Henry Whitfield, shout out to Sarah Sportman for the Connecticut Archaeology Fair, which was held on site there on October 14th, and it rained and rained and rained. But we had tents, and so I'm going to shout out also to Kathy Labadia and Corey Atkinson from SHPO. And I just want to say that Corey stood in the rain for, I think, hours and helped kids learn to throw at Lottles. So he gets a medal for that, and he was on that throwing team. Don't just ask him about that sometime. Also want to shout out to Dr. Bill Farley, who's the archaeology professor from Southern Connecticut State University, who's been leading the digs on site for the last few years. He gave a great presentation, packed. There wasn't no room sitting under the tent to listen to him in the rain about all the sort of the sequence of archaeological digs that have been held on the campus and what they tell us about the site. It was great. One more event for Whitfield, which is the Firelight Festival on the evening of December 1st. And at the Prudence Crandall Museum, really what we're doing right now is testing the new exhibit. We've had some issues with the fabrication of some of the panels. We're getting those fixed, but we've had to change the tour a little bit to sort of reflect where we thought the panels were going. And that's kind of fun because it's a never-ending joy to actually get work towards a better interpretation on your site. And then also SHPO staff are heading out to the museum Thursday or Friday, I think, this week to look at some of the restoration work that we're having some issues with, including rusting nail heads, which is like a very sad thing. But we do feel like at this time we have the Department of Administrative Services who helped us administer the work behind us. So I don't know, we could have some interesting discussions going on because everyone acknowledged during the project that the painting contractors were not acceptable, and yet there was nothing they could do about that at the time. So we'll see. It's very interesting how all of this shakes out. So that's what's happening. But it's been a really good season. We are definitely up and exceeding the numbers that we had last year. And I think we're exceeding our numbers from 2019, the last full pre-pandemic museum. And that's a trend that I'm seeing in museums across Connecticut for this year. So good news.
Thank you, Liz. Item 14 under new business. Jonathan?
Sir, thank you, Paul. I distributed to council a draft meeting schedule for next year, and it included 2 columns if you have it available to look at. The first column is if we had stuck with the first Wednesdays of each month. And then I did a second column with adjusted dates, taking into consideration some of the holidays we bumped up against. There were 4 months of the year where I saw the meeting immediately following, I believe, a holiday weekend. The first one being right after New Year's. So let me know, are there any questions or thoughts on this? Are you comfortable with that adjusted schedule for next year? Happy to take any questions or suggestions.
Beth?
Hey, Jonathan, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Beth.
Noticing, I think October 2nd starts Rosh Hashanah. I don't know if that's a problem.
Okay, let me take a quick peek at that. Is that a
It begins on
conflict?
sunset, though. I don't know if that affects.
Oh, so later that day.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't speak to others, but if it's not in the evening, then it's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so is everyone okay with the second? Okay, thank you for bringing that to my attention, Beth. Appreciate that. Okay, if there are no other comments or suggestions or changes on that, I will, what we'll do is, Paul, do you want to take a vote now to have the council approve that adjusted schedule for next year? Is that something you'd like to memorialize with a vote, or do you want me to just set the schedule?
Does anybody have any comments on changing those 4 dates, just so it's not immediately following a Monday holiday? I don't see any
Yeah, so if you want me
objections.
to run
So
through that, I'm sorry, the first is avoiding New Year's. The second one is the week after the Easter weekend. And then obviously July 3rd is right before the 4th holiday, and then Labor Day we're avoiding with the September change, so.
I don't think anybody's voicing any objections, so I don't know if we need a formal vote on the schedule. Sarah, has that been a practice in the past, or?
It hasn't been a practice in the past. But
I
we've
think
not
it's
really
fine.
changed things in the past either, so it doesn't hurt to take a vote.
Sure, if everybody likes a vote, I'll have a vote. Okay. Do you have a motion in a second, or just go to a vote?
I make a motion to accept the schedule as presented.
Okay, thank you. Second.
I'll second it, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, Beth Ackley.
Aye.
V.
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I will abstain for whatever reason. Tom Elmore.
Aye.
Leah.
Aye.
Andy.
Aye.
And Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Wonderful, thank you. We will we'll formalize that and get that sent where it needs to go, and we'll get those dates on the calendar for everybody. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
And then obviously as the year goes on, if we need to change a date, there's certainly flexibility to do that if we need to. Okay. Did you want to go on to number 2?
Yeah, item number 2 was the HPC training requests. We asked that this be brought up onto the agenda since we do have a few new members to the council, and just having a refresher. And one that we mentioned earlier, Sarah, was actually having a review of grant procedures and requirements, like for the Historic Restoration Fund grants, so there's clarity for all of us as to what level of documentation is required at what stage.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? And this is, I guess, directed more towards the design professionals on the council, but I think I'd like to understand from you guys, what is the minimum level of plan development that you would need to feel comfortable upon a review, knowing that there are multiple levels? And I'd like to ask Mary, what level of plans what level are the plans that we're funding through survey and planning being developed to?
We are funding them to bidding and construction.
Full construction and bidding. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. So I guess I'd like some feedback from you guys as to what the minimum level of plan development to be satisfied or to be comfortable would be really helpful for us to hear, because we can take that and incorporate it, or we can, move that discussion along, knowing that that's sort of where you guys need to be from a plan development standpoint.
Sarah?
Dee had her hand up first.
Oh.
I think, we've been asked to vote on the budget. I think typically in the industry, 80 to 100% is ideal, because then you know that there's enough details to be able to have an objective mind when you're reviewing the price. I think that the biggest part in today's industry, where there's constantly price escalation and project schedules, it's important that when we vote on the budget, that they have substantially completed the plans, so that they don't come back for more money because they didn't have enough details for the contractors to provide a detailed substantial quote for it. So my preference in the perfect world would be 100%, but I think 90% will be ideal.
And those are construction documents, correct?
Those are the construction documents, yes, because, quite frankly, you can't really price based on the design development or the schematics drawings. You do need the construction documents to provide accurate pricing.
And Paul, let me just interject quickly.
Sure.
So the definition of construction documents is drawings and specs.
That's correct. Unless there are exceptions where, depending on what the budget is, architects can give a pretty detailed specs on the plans. And if that's the case, often the drawings are accepted by itself without the specs, but it has to be a very detailed drawings to go off at.
But it's the final set of drawings. It's not
It's the
design,
final, correct.
not the design development drawings.
Not the design development, final set of the construction documents.
So
Sarah?
you're thinking beyond, I'm sorry, so beyond design development, but an 80 or so % completed set of construction documents with specs would allow you to really understand what's being proposed and justify the budget, but also would still allow some flexibility before the 100% set is completed to incorporate any changes that you guys are recommending or seeing. So, okay, I'm just trying to understand where you guys are coming from and what your needs are.
And
Sarah?
also technically anything that is less of the 80%, if the price increase, the contractor is justified because they did not have all the details to price accordingly.
Sarah, you're the next in the queue.
Okay, thank you. I agree with everything that V is saying, with a lot of support. But the one thing that I'm going to argue sort of at a lower level of documentation is that sometimes you want to be able to have input at a stage where not every detail is mostly drawn because you want to suggest an alternate way of proceeding with something. And I completely agree, about the budget and making sure that the scope is well articulated enough that the budget recognizes that. But I feel that there has to be the built-in flexibility for the owner to have not spent all of their fee dollars if in fact we're going to suggest perhaps an alternate way of considering solving a problem. And with that, I'll turn it over to Beth and Tom and Paul.
Well, Jonathan, I think what is important for this idea of the training is to actually go through and really understanding what's written into the statutes for the reviews, because we have two different tracks of review, right? We have the historic appropriateness review. That's one aspect of things. And getting to Sarah's point, being able to see something early on in the design and say, "Oh my God, you're lopping off the characteristic feature of the building. How can you be doing that?" And to Dee's point, at the end of the process, are we adequately funding or making sure that they've got contingencies for the unknowns and things like that. So there are two separate points, but knowing what's required of the grant language, because we've had the discussions from applicants in the past. It's like, we're only required to spend DD levels. Why are you asking us for a CD drawing? So that's, I think, part of the desire for this kind of enhanced training to get everybody on the same page.
I'm hearing that maybe step one here is a gathering of council with, maybe Aaron and I, and taking a deep dive or a look into both the statutory language and our guidelines for the program to really understand what we're asking and how it compares to what you guys are hoping to see. And we want to make sure that that's all consistent, obviously, across the board for our applicants. Does that sound like something that would help you guys if we set up a time to chat with you and we could share screen, go through the guidelines or the application and really talk about what's required and kind of hone the program? And Erin's right here too, so I don't want to speak for her, but
yeah, I think so. Let me get Beth in with Hackley with your questions.
Sure. I mean, I was starting one way and now I'm just sort of building. I think we're all generally more or less in consensus here. I would add to what Paul said. I think we also can contribute to, best practices, comments on best practices for preservation. We can do that, and again, we should go back and look at the statutes, but often when we do take these deep dives, we are looking at preservation best practices in addition to the other things that Paul mentioned. And we can, contribute to that because essentially we're helping to guide the state's dollars and do great preservation work. But in order to do that, we don't have to have 100% construction documents, but we do have to have a, a good DD set. So it kind of is just threading the needle that there's enough detail that we can understand the project on a granular level, but it doesn't have to be necessarily all the way fleshed out. And I think, when we're doing preservation best practice comments, in the past, it's worked well that, if it's not all the way detailed, we comment on it, and then Erin takes it to the applicant and says, this is what the council recommends might be included in the final. But I do think a conversation, I think we've had a few conversations like this before, and the challenge is that there are so many different types of projects, and can we really come up with some patterns? Like, let's build on maybe what we dug up before and maybe didn't finish, because it's all about and I find this in my own practice. Everything is so custom in this industry, but there are patterns. If we just stick with it for a little while, maybe we can come up with some of those patterns to be a little more prescriptive about it.
And I would just interject. Sorry, Jonathan. Interject. It may be something that's bracketed by the scale of the project. To Dee's point, if it's a small project and we're worried about funding something and not having enough in the budgets that are there, versus the Stowe Center, where we see it's a huge project and we're supplementing a very small portion of it, seeing every detail is kind of beyond what our capability is, because it's sort of, are we funding just the roof portion or something else when it's, 200,000 on $1.5 million project. So there may be something that we discuss at this training as to how we would approach things based on different project scales, and if there would be any difference in what we would see at that point. Tom, you still have your hand raised?
Yeah, and not to muddy the waters any further. However, remember when we were having these discussions previously and there was an emergency furnace replacement that needed to be done before the January freeze kicked in. We really said, do we really need construction drawings for this, or a competent installation? Because none of the piping is going to be modified, or very little of it, and the furnace is going to go right back to where it's at. So just like what you said, Paul, magnitude of project, and if it's an emergency, that's one thing, but if it's a small project versus a large project, the level of drawings and level of detail, I think, should justify the size of the project, or should be justified by the size of the project.
Okay, well, we're happy to continue this conversation. I think that would be beneficial for you guys, and I think Erin and I and staff would find it extremely helpful to sort of have some predictability about what's going to be requested. And I completely understanding that there will be variations between projects all the time, knowing sort of on average what that baseline of information that you guys need, so that can be what we're requesting in the application is important. So happy to set that up. We'll look for maybe some dates in the next month or so to get that going, or at least start that conversation. And we'll set that up remotely so we can, whoever wants to participate on council is certainly welcome to, but I will follow up on that.
Thank you.
And then, sure, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, then our second request for training is related to the Connecticut Environmental Policy Act and the Protection Act. As we're seeing that we have a new Protection Act
yes,
agenda item coming up, especially with new members. We might not have training prior to that, but it seems like it's a good time to get a clarity of the distinguishing between the two different programs, and what our level of review is on each of them, if any, and how do we, coming off of also the Deborah Chapel situation, just getting a better understanding for everyone involved on the council as to what is possible, what's not possible, and perhaps providing some suggestions back to staff kind of on.
No, I completely agree, Paul. Thank you for bringing that up. I absolutely do still owe you guys a training on the Protection Act, but I think it might be helpful also to talk about Policy Act a little bit, just to see how they relate to each other, and how the interplay between the two processes works. I will circle back this week with the Office of the Attorney General and try to push that forward for you guys, knowing that there are new members on the council and that it is very timely. So yes, thank you, and I will do that this week and follow up with you guys.
Yeah.
Can I just add one quick thought before we move on here?
Absolutely.
I know it was maybe a year and a half ago. I think there was a group that got together to start talking about categorizing and expectations for HRF grants. If there was anything produced for that as a summary, it would be great to dig that up and build off of it rather than sort of start from zero again. Because I think, you know, this is a very similar conversation that we had at that point, and we seem to be having trouble moving past it. So if we could start there, where we ended up and move forward, that would be might get us a little further in the conversation.
Sure thing. I will work with Aaron to see if we can locate that, and maybe we can use that as the sort of foundation to jump off of for that next round of conversations.
Awesome.
Are there any other requests from council members as to any particular training? Sarah Nelson?
It's not training per se, but the conversation about HRF program sort of made me think about holistically as staff and council members work together on programs. There's a natural evolution of programs that happens because the world is changing, the applicants are changing, the projects are changing, and it would be, I think, a wonderful learning opportunity to take each of the programs that council is charged with, be it the survey and planning grants or other things, and have staff talk with council about, this is the range of projects that we're seeing. These are the issues that we're having. These are our thoughts about how we think we want to tweak the program in the future, and then, you know, allow council members who are also working in the field to kind of bring in any comments that they see as well, so that we're collaborating as the programs are evolving.
That's a good idea, Sarah. And there are certainly programs on the agenda every month that we don't touch on frequently, but that are the charge of the council. So it might be interesting for you guys to hear a little bit about, you know, a few minutes of information about each one of those programs. And we'd be happy to do that. That's no problem at all.
Tom? Yeah, mute, Tom.
Sorry about that. Jonathan, while we're talking about the SEPA and the Policy Act versus the other, would it be possible for you to give us an update on the history and what happened with Seaside? Because I saw an RFP for the demolition and the development of the public park. And I'm just very curious as to how that all unfolded. And I'm actually very concerned about how that's going to affect SEPA moving forward.
Yeah, certainly a hot topic. We are certainly concerned about it as well. We have been working on that with, you know, the appropriate state agencies for quite some time now. And we did go through the Policy Act process for that review, which is the mechanism that allows SHPO to comment on state projects such as Seaside. So that is the process through which we were able to review it and comment on it. We did offer comments to the agency, DEEP, who was pushing that forward, and noted that what they were proposing was an adverse effect to historic resources, obviously, because they have selected an alternative that will result in demolition of the site. They have taken that process and moved forward with it and gotten approval from OPM. So they have now gone out to bid and have consultants on board, I understand. So unfortunately, it seems that although we will certainly continue to push for a better solution, however we can, within the constraints of you know, being a state agency, we will certainly do that. But yes, absolutely, it is a concern, and we're, obviously not pleased with the outcome because it is a priceless and irreplaceable resource for the state of Connecticut, and we're really sorry to see that this has been the result.
Thank you.
Any further comments or requests? Okay, Jonathan, so whenever you have some thoughts on when we can get things together, we can kind of take up the pulse of people's availability and move forward with some of these trainings. They're all valuable.
Absolutely. Happy to do that.
Okay, moving right along on item 15, or liaison with public and private agencies.
Hi, everybody. Jane Montanaro with Preservation Connecticut. I just have two quick announcements. This weekend, we're hosting an event in partnership with the Dudley Farm. So we'll be in Guilford Saturday from 1 to 2:30, doing a talking about preservation in person on site at the Dudley Farm. Beth Payne, the museum director, will talk about ongoing preservation efforts, new exhibits, and take us on a tour of the historic farmstead. And my second announcement is funding. Our partnership with the 1772 Foundation to provide matching grants for museums, historical societies, and nonprofits. We're opening up our 2024 awards by December 1st. Letters of inquiry are due, and you can upload those letters on our website, preservationct.org. We have a portal for all of those grants to come through, and it's $10,000 for maintenance and repairs. And those are my two announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Is there any other comments from the public?
Yes, we do have one member of the public here in person. Ms. Carol Ledoux would like to address the council.
Good morning. Thank you so much. I am so very passionate about this. I am mostly Lithuanian, and just my grandmother, Antoinette Stankovic, got on a boat steerage out of Lithuania when she was 14 years old by herself because there was no food in Lithuania. She ended up in a sweatshop in the Lower East Side, working 14 hours a day, doing sewing and crocheting. She brought piecework home. And she taught me at a very young age how to do sewing and crocheting, which it's a very special memory. The Lithuanian church in Waterbury, St. Joseph's, is gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. The most per capita of Lithuanians live in Connecticut. I go to Holy Trinity Church on Capitol Avenue. I'm a practicing Lithuanian Roman Catholic, and that is a Lithuanian church. And there's a lot I would like to say, and Christian Allen prepared a statement that I can have you listen to. The area around the church, St. Joseph's in Waterbury, is impoverished. And Christian has some really, really good ideas. He's a selectman in Canaan. He's running for first selectman. And one of his ideas was to have a stuff drive to go up to the transfer stations in Canaan and bring the stuff down to the impoverished people. And I had the idea that perhaps the very wealthy women who perhaps would have too much time on their hands could come down to volunteer at the school to teach math or reading and help the people who could use it the most. And back to the church, unfortunately, the Archdiocese of Hartford has made the decision, I think it's quite disastrous, to close the church. And I was going down to Mass there for the month of September and trying to work to keep the church open. And I realize this is a little bit off to the side, but it's a gorgeous, gorgeous church. It's the oldest Lithuanian church in North America. It was built in 1894, and it's the best example of Lithuanian architecture in the whole North America. And I just would like to say things about the area with, it's called Brooklyn Waterbury, after Brooklyn, New York. And there were properties built by the Irish and the Italians. And when the Lithuanians got a hold of these properties, they embellished them with Lithuanian embellishments. And Christian actually is renting a place in Brooklyn Waterbury. I went to his apartment. It's on the second floor. The construction is about from 1900, and the masonry is still solid. His apartment is on the second floor, and huge, beautiful windows, beautiful construction, and he's working to update it here. And it's unbelievably beautiful construction. And he's on the second floor, and he says, I don't even need to heat it. I don't even need to heat it the way it is. High, beautiful windows. And off to the side, we were talking about his windows and the beautiful construction. So back to the church, we have emailed you pictures. And also at about 1860, Lithuanians came over from Lithuania because they were not free to worship in their country. So faith was very important to them, and they wanted a place to worship. And I have more to say. Christian prepared a statement, and I didn't have time to transcribe it, so I'm just going to turn it up, and hopefully everybody can listen to it. I heard it this morning. What's going on?
Hi, Carol. Here is a brief recounting of St. Joseph's Parish history, the first Lithuanian church and parish in New England. The Lithuanian settlement in Waterbury began in the 1860s, where early Lithuanian immigrants found home in Waterbury over the first major established Lithuanian community in the United States in the coal region of Pennsylvania, because Waterbury had better jobs in the brass industry. As the Lithuanian community grew, Mass was first said at 22 Green Street, a tenement house, which still exists today. Later, Mass was said in Lithuanian in the basement of St. Patrick's Church in the Brooklyn section of Waterbury. Brooklyn was named Brooklyn because the predominantly Irish and later German, Lithuanian, Russian, and Italian immigrants that first settled the Brooklyn neighborhood were from Brooklyn, New York. The first Lithuanian individual in the city of Waterbury that is known originated from Pennsylvania, but larger waves in the 1870s and 1880s were from Brooklyn, New York, of Lithuanians that first went through Ellis Island, spent a short amount of time in Brooklyn, New York, then came to Brooklyn, Waterbury. The buildings in the lower section of Waterbury in Brooklyn were predominantly constructed by Irish, but were later renovated by Lithuanians. Some buildings in this neighborhood still have Lithuanian ornamentation, particularly along Green Street. The masses at St. Patrick's later led to the construction of the first church of and the establishment of St. Joseph's Parish. The first church was located on John Street, where the existing school building is today. The current church building was erected in 1904. In 1912, the first school building, a parochial school, K through 8, was built along Congress Avenue across from the church and was later demolished and now is a parking lot. To the south of this school was an orphanage established circa 1908 during the typhoid fever epidemic and later closed in the 1970s. This building stands today. North of the current church building, the parish purchased a 3-family home and converted it into a rectory. This rectory was demolished in 2008 and served continuously as a rectory. In 1925 through 1926, the current school building was built on John Street and the old church building was demolished. The old church building was wooden and unremarkable. The new school building, along with the church, were designed with Lithuanian elements. The school basement includes a 10-lane duck pin bowling alley, which remains intact and under good maintenance today. 1962 was a pivotal year for St. Joseph's. Father Braddock, the then pastor, utilized parish funds to conduct a renovation of the church interior, which removed most Lithuanian ornamentation and replaced it with post-Vatican II ornamentation, or lack thereof. Same year, a convent was built along John Street north of the school building, which includes a chapel. This chapel has 5 stained glass windows that were designed by a Lithuanian refugee from the Soviet Union, whose name I do not have right now. I forgot to mention that in 1926, Blessed George Valenteus, Blessed George Matulaitis from Lithuania, visited the parish. He was a friend of the then priest of the parish, or pastor of the parish, Father Valenteus, who was pastor from 1919 through to 1959. While Blessed George Matulaitis was in Waterbury, he confirmed over 2,000 Lithuanian individuals. The period from parish's founding, 1894, through to 1962, was the first era of parish history. This was a time where the Brooklyn section of Waterbury and the brass industry were thriving, a time when the Waterbury city government was well run, with the exception of the 1955 flood and the corruption of the Hayes administration in the 1930s and earlier in the 1920s. And the neighborhood was growing with nearly constant 3-story buildings being built north and west of Congress Avenue by Lithuanian contractors, particularly John Statkus, who would utilize Sears and Roebuck materials to build the unique Waterbury 3-family homes that still exist in that section of Brooklyn and Town Plot. These 3-family homes are noted compared to other 3-family homes in Waterbury for being perfectly plumb.
Yeah.
Even now,
Registered.
after a century of their construction.
And I have a couple more
The
things to add
third
to this.
and most pivotal
won't go on
event of
forever.
1962 was the demolition of the commercial buildings of the Brooklyn neighborhood, which ran along Charles Street and Riverside Street. These streets have been carved beyond recognition due to the construction of the Route 8 and I-84 interchange known as the Mixmaster.
I think.
Looks like they're about halfway through.
These commercial brick buildings, largely 3, 4, and 5 stories tall, were home to many Lithuanian businesses,
Hold on, how about I
including
pause that?
banks.
Yeah, mine.
So this is the thing. I'm a little emotional. My sister died August 1st. It wasn't unexpected. And my godfather died the end of September. He was an honor guard for Lyndon Johnson and Kennedy, which is off to the side. I'm so very passionate about this. And I will tell you just a little bit about my church, Holy Trinity, in Hartford. Father Jacobs is wonderful. He's real. And part of our money there goes to feed the people who live under the bridges of 84 and 91. And Lithuanians give back to the community. And so many people attend the church or attending the church in Waterbury. And there was a beautiful Lithuanian festival. It went on all night long. I played violin with my violin teacher near the church. And we raised money for Ukraine because of what's going on there. So I'm new to this process and we're trying to get this registered. The Archbishop of Lithuania is in Connecticut. Well, he's either in New York or Boston. He was at Holy Trinity on this past Sunday. And our priest, Father Jacobs at Holy Trinity, you can bring your dogs to church. There's dog food mission. He refuses to fly the pride flag. He says anybody is welcome. Anyone is welcome. And that's the whole mission. And I'm new to this process and whatever I need to do, I'll help. I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional today.
No, it's okay.
So whatever you need from me, I'll get it. Christian couldn't be here today, Eric, and there's another person, Dr. Dahlia. I can't even pronounce her last name. It's long in Lithuanian. So whatever you need from us, I want to get it registered. Tell me what I need to do, please. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And the only other thing I can say, I'm glad I found my people.
We'll work internally at the staff level with Ms. Ledoux to see if we can evaluate the property and get it designated, or if that's a possibility.
Please call me Carol.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Ms. Ledoux is proper because I'm not married, but Carol is perfectly fine.
Got it. Okay. We will work internally at the staff level with Carol, and we'll provide an update for you at the next meeting, let you know how that panned out.
Thank you.
Just like to thank you also, Carol, as also being of Lithuanian descent. It was interesting to hear the history of this particular area.
And I would like to say one last thing. Labas means hello, L-A-B-A-S. So labas, which is what we say in church. Labas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no other comments, I'd like to have a motion for an adjournment. I saw Sarah raise her hand very quickly, and a second by Leah Glazer. Thank you all, and we look forward to seeing everyone for our special meeting next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.